but quite unusually differently.
Okay, let's begin.
Yep.
Kumlena block Gemara. So it says Kisutei Shalach Chassidus. We're Daf Yud Aleph in Masechta Tainis, and we're talking about that if somebody feels the pain of others, like during a famine, he makes sure that they don't eat, and they empathize with other people. It is conducive for all kinds of brachas. So now that we're talking about a famine, Amar Ish Lakish, about 8 lines on the top of the page, Ish Lakish said, a person is not allowed to have pleasure, so you're not allowed to have any marital relations during a famine. Shenemer, it says in the pasuk, Yosef had 2 children, 2 sons, Beterem Tavesh Nasarah, before the hunger started. So therefore we see, but not during the famine. Tana, we learned Chasuche Bandi, but if somebody, let's say, doesn't have children, that didn't fulfill the mitzvah puravu, then Mishamshin Mitasein B'Shnei Rov, they can't have tashmish during the famine years because the mitzvah puravu overrides it. Taisus and all the Shonim asked, how come the Yocheved was born Bein HaChaimus as they entered Mitzrayim, which means it was during the famine. So he did have marital relations during the famine. So some of the Shonim answer, for Taisus says the whole thing is only in middle Chassidus. And it's not a halacha. The other Shemol is definitely a halacha. You're not allowed to have marital relations during the famine, but it's only, the Ran says, for example, it only applies to Yidden. If Yidden are suffering, it says the only Yidden there were the Shvatim and Yosef. The Shvatim weren't suffering, they had ample food. Yosef for sure wasn't suffering, so therefore they didn't feel that they have to avoid Tashmish. And Yosef, who did, because he wasn't aware that his family wasn't suffering. But another possibility is that Yosef was of the opinion that Puravu is like Beishamai to have 2 boys. So he fulfilled, according to him, he fulfilled mitzvah Puravu. He's not going to have any more relations. Yocheved was the first daughter that was born. So Levi felt that he didn't fulfill the mitzvah Puravu because a boy is not enough. You need a boy and a girl, and therefore he had tashmish, and that's the machlekes between Yosef and Levi. Okay, continue the Gemara. We learned if the Eden generally are suffering with Pirshechmen, and one of them decided to have a grand time and ignore everybody else's pain, he's boy come along with 2 malachim the 2 malachim, one on the right and one on the left, because we say Friday night kimal achav yitzavaloch. They place their hands on his head. But they say, plain is that this person here who doesn't feel the pain of his brethren, neither will he see the consolation of his brethren as well. Can you look elsewhere? When a person, when the community generally is suffering, a person should say, I will go home in the privacy of my home, and I will eat, I will drink, for me it's all good. Because if he does do that, all of us, the pasuk says, rejoicing, hareg bacher, he kills the cattle and shechs the sheep. He eats meat and he drinks wine, and eat drinking machar namus, because tomorrow we are going to die. No, let's enjoy this while we can. What does it say in the next pasuk? This is revealed to them, to Hashem. Will this sin be forgiven ad Musim before he dies? So in other words, by the person hearing that this is a terrible thing, hopefully he will reform. So ad kam midas beinim. So this person, therefore, at least he's not so bad. If you remind him that this is not the proper behavior and that you need to do tshuva, and you tell him, you warn him, tomorrow you're going to die. Oh, okay, so maybe then he will reform. But there's another kind of breed of people. It says different. I saw you. Come, let's bring wine. Let's go get inebriated. Let's do the same thing tomorrow again. Let's live it up. Maxi Basrei, what does the next pasuk say? Tzaddik avad, the tzaddik will perish. The ain ish sam alev, and nobody will even think that there's a correlation between the two. And that's what tzaddik. Nobody even realizes that because of their misbehavior, the tzaddik will pass away. Now this is very interesting. So the Rasha is having a good time, so who gets punished? The tzaddik gets punished. And why would the Rasha even care? So it says, because this Russia is what do you call it? As Rashi says in the second shot, the tzaddik always davens on behalf of the Rishonim and tries to protect him. The Eibusha takes the tzaddik away so that he can no longer protect. Like the Eibusha, we heard a few days ago, the Eibusha told Yirmiyah, don't daven. Now, don't daven me about your generation. And therefore, when the tzaddik is lost, actually hurts them. And that's why, when we're saying these are the Rishonim, they don't show any empathy towards their brethren who are inside. Yeah. She came, was it Ella? Everybody has to feel the pain of the community. She also decided to feel the discomfort of the Yidden. It says in the Pasuk, when they had the war with Amalek, his hands were heavy. They took a stone, and they made him sit on a stone. And he sat on it. And didn't he have a mattress? Didn't he have a pillow? Why a stone, a rough stone? And the Kachal Moshe, even the suffering now, I'll feel that pain as well. But anybody who does that, and you make sure that he feels the same pain as everybody else, you will merit to see also the nechama, the consolation of the community. A person will say, in the privacy of my home, who knows what I'm doing? Me, may it be. I want you to know that Avle Beisa Shel Adam, the Kodesh Beisa Shel Adam, Me'idim, by the stones and the beams, they will testify against you. Shenema, it says the pasuk, to Evan Mekir Tizek, the stones from the wall will scream out. The copies me'eit, copies are half bricks. We'll have this in the beginning of Abasa. That's it. Between the slabs of wood is Yanena will respond to you. The Rambam says that the mezuzah is in your house, and testify what's going on in the house. This is what he means. The kodesh beis shalom, it means the mezuzah in the house will scream out. Reb Sheila Amri, Reb Sheila says, the two malachim that escort a person. They testify. It says, ki malachav yitzav. So this is what we mentioned before, that two malachim, these are the malachim that every person does escort every person. They escort every person. A Pchika says, Nishmasa Shaladim Love, your own neshama is going to testify against you. Shalema. Because it says in Pasuk, that which is lying in your bosom, which is your neshama, Shmor Pischepich, better watch your openings of your mouth, better watch what comes out of your mouth, because they are listening. The Yeshayim Evodah Shaladim, it's actually your limbs that are going to testify against you. Shalema, it says, Atem Eidai Nu'um Hashem. He says, you are my witnesses, says Hashem, Kail Emuna. You are my witnesses, says the Eibishter. Says the Gemara, because it says Atem in plural. Who are the Atem plural? So we're saying that's your limbs, your many limbs. The Pasuk says, Kail Emuna, it says Nazir, Kail Emuna, Ve'inavel Eibishter is faithful and he doesn't do anything wrong. What do you mean? Just like the Rishonim get paid, get punished in the world to come. Even for the small Avedas, it's not just the serious Avedas. Once you punish them with the serious Avedas, everything, the aggregate. The same thing we had a few days ago, that sometimes tzaddikim suffer in this world, so to expunge any iniquities that they have, so they can go straight to Gan Eden. We had before, they're mastic din. Tzedek, which we said before, doesn't mean tzedakah, generosity. Tzedek means justice. So we're saying the same thing here. The Eibishter punishes tzeddikim in this world, even on Aveda Kala, on a minor Aveda, the choice they do. The Eibishter does that in order that they should be able to go to Gan Eden. They ain't avil, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing corrupted. But in return, tzaddikim will get their reward in Mahabad, not just for the major mitzvahs they did, but I feel on mitzvah kalash, even on the minor mitzvahs. And therefore the Rishonim have a good time in this world, even for the small mitzvahs they do. I feel on mitzvah kalash, even the small mitzvahs they get their reward here, so that they can go straight to Gan. So he says the pasuk tzaddik v'yasheru, there's Kalim Munavei novel and tzaddik v'yasheru. What does that mean? The tzaddik v'yasher. Tzaddik, we said before, doesn't necessarily mean generosity. It could also mean that David is just, he does his din, but it's all correct. He's doing them a favor by punishing tzaddikim in this world. When this turn in front of him, when a person passes away, all of his deeds pass in front of him. We say, we say to the person, this is what you did in this particular place on that particular day. And he nods his head and says, yes. And after they record all of his activities and they relate to him all of his activities, he signs. It says in the very passage, the Yad Kol Adam Yachtem, every person will sign, so that he agrees that whatever he's been accused of or whatever he's been said about him is all correct. Not only does he sign, but he says, yes, whatever you're going to do to me is correct. No one ever complains about the justice that's being meted out in Shemaim. And he says, Yafet Antuni, what you said is correct. And this fulfills the passage where it says, that all your words are correct. Okay, now getting back to the matter at hand, the subject which is fasting. So we have a fascinating argument here. Shmuel says, Shmuel says, but don't think that by sitting and fasting is a good thing. Whoever fasts, is actually called a sinner. Now, by fasting, you're weakening yourself. That's actually called a sinner. It's not an idea that is promoted. Why? He holds like the following time, because it's machlekes, as we'll soon see, between Rabbi Lozer HaKapar and Rabbi Lozer. The Tanya we look at Rabbi Lozer HaKapar, but Rabbi Lozer HaKapar, the great one, said, what does the passage mean? It says if a nazir then became tamei, he has to be chatas, and the chiper olam ma'ashachota, he'll be forgiven, atoned for sinning al hanefesh. What do you mean al hanefesh? Did he kill somebody? What do you mean al hanefesh? What do you want to say to himself? Okay, he was a nazir, and then he came tamei. So what do you mean chata al hanefesh? Sounds like he killed somebody else. Who did he kill? Who did he hurt? Who did he harm? What does it mean? Which nefesh did he sin with? His own, because he did, but it's not because he became tummy. It's because he denied himself wine. The Abishah gave you wine, you have an ability to be mile the wine and knife for the Kaddish, and you denied yourself that opportunity, therefore you consider a sinner. What does do? He's permitted to eat and drink whatever he wants, except wine. And yet, he's called a denier, he's called a sinner. He's called a sinner. Somebody who decides to fast completely, surely he's a sinner. Rabbi Lozer says, Nikra Kodesh. Rabbi Lozer disagrees. He says fasting is a great thing. You're called a holy person. Shenemar, it says by a Nazir, the description of a Nazir is, it says that while he's a Nazir, he shouldn't shave his head. And then it says, Kodesh, he's a holy person. And then God will let his hair grow. So it says, Kodesh, he's a holy person. On the contrary, we see that denying yourself, even just why you're a holy person, surely if you deny yourself everything, even holier. So it's amazing, you have two different shittas here altogether, whether the denial and abstinence is a good thing or a bad thing. It's like the difference in Musa and Chassidus. Musa says that he advocates the denial and all of that, and Chassidus on the contrary. Advocates that you should be involved in the world, but you should be mindful of the world. Tosfos brings an interesting thing here that according to Shmuel, sometimes fasting is actually a good thing. Shmuel himself says that sometimes fasting is a good thing. So how can over here he says that fasting is a terrible thing? So Tosfos says an interesting thing. Fasting is always a terrible thing. But sometimes for a good cause, the mitzvah of fasting for the good cause is greater than the aveda for fasting by denying yourself food. And sometimes we do that. For example, perfect example is if somebody had a nightmare, the Shulchan Aruch talks about on Shabbos, if you have, you're not allowed to fast on Shabbos, but if you have a nightmare, it's actually encouraged to fast. To you're concerned that it's some kind of a premonition or something terrible is going to happen, so you can fast. But then on Sunday you have to fast to make up the fact that you fast on a Shabbos. So here we have a concept where fasting on Shabbos is an avera, but there's a mitzvah to fast to get rid of the nightmare, the foreboding of the nightmare, so that you do tshuva. And the mitzvah is greater than avera, so we tell you go ahead and fast, and then we tell you do tshuva for the avera you did. So we have the same thing here, says Tosfos by according to Shmuel. Shmuel also agrees. And Shmuel says you're not allowed to fast. It's a terrible thing. But sometimes there's a good cause to fast, and that cause the mitzvah overrides the Aveda. Says he went further. Okay, so let's continue this point. So let's labor this point. Shmuel holds it's a good thing. You should fast, and you call the sinner. If you call the sinner for being a nazir, why does the Torah describe him as a kaddish, a holy person? Well, Shmuel ha'ikar kaddish, he's called a holy person. Says Gemara, Shmuel does not say that the person is called a holy person. His hair is ahu agidul perakoi. He's saying that the hair growth is holy. You're not allowed to cut it off. But not that the person himself is holy. He's doing the wrong thing for becoming a nazir. Even though the Gemara in the Dharam tells us about that story of Shimon, about this kid who looked in the water and he saw how handsome he was, he decided to become a nazir, so he'll force himself to take a haircut. And he says, what a noble idea, and then it's a good thing to be nazir. Again, there's a mitzvah that he did. The reason why he took on nazir was a great mitzvah, but at the end of the day, the nazir itself is not a great thing, but the mitzvah overrides the aveir of becoming a nazir. That's how Shmuel learns it. Anyway, why is it called kaddish? Because of the hair. Well, Rabbi Lazar, how can Rabbi Lazar go ahead and say that he's a holy person for denying himself the wine? The Torah itself says that he's a chayta, that he's a sinner. It says he's a sinner. Now there is specifically talking about the fact that he became tamei. You took it by his own naziris, you should have been more careful. And you should have. That's why he's called a chayta. But the naziris itself, according to Rabbi Lazar, is a great thing. Says Rabbi actually say that. Rabbi Lazar himself said, a person should always measure himself, assess himself. A person should always imagine that he's a holy person, and therefore you shouldn't fast, because when you're fasting, what happens is you lose some weight, and by losing some weight, you're losing some of your kedusha, you're losing some of your holiness. So here we say that Rabbi Lazar says that fasting is a great thing, and somewhere else Rabbi Lazar says no, that you have to treat your neighbor kaddish, that you're in as a kaddish, and you should treat it as a kaddish, and if you're not allowed to fast. And then the pasuk says, he says, I will not come into the city. Remember, we learned before that the Eibusha says, I will not go into the Shalayim Shalmaila until you go to Shalayim Shalmata. When you do tshuva, then I'll come into the Shalayim Shalmaila. But also the pasuk simply says, and if you are fasting, I will not go into the city of Lamaila because I don't want people to fast. How can Rabbi Lazar? How do you reconcile Rabbi Lazar? Like kasha. So now we must according to Rabbi Lazar. If you're capable of fasting, then Rabbi Lazar says he advocates fasting. It's a good thing. If you cannot fast and you're still fasting, then the Eibusha says, your body is holy. I will not go to Yerushalayim as long as you're fasting and you're harming yourself, because then you can't learn properly. You're harming yourself. Then you call a sinner. Yeah, Rish not only is it a good thing to fast, but nikra chassid. Not only are you a kaddish, you're actually called a chassid, which is even greater. So it's Shenemer says goimel. Now there's big machlekes highlight shopping murder. Rashi tastes. So right now we're looking at Rashi. Shloki says he agrees with Rabbi Lazar that it's a good thing you fast, but you say he's called a kaddish. I'm going beyond that. I'm saying that he's a chassid. So look at that. A chassid is even greater than a kaddish. And how do I know that? Shenemer, because it says in pasuk goimel nafshay ish chesed, and we're going to learn goimel is like b'yemi gomel. There's Yitzchak, which means weaning off. That goimel nafsh, if somebody weans himself off food, then what is he? He is a ish chesed. So therefore he's considered a ish chesed. He's considered a chesed. He's a chesed. Or Rashi means another pshat, goimel means that you're paying off. You're paying off the Eibusha with your nefesh, you're a chesed. And if you fast and you get weaker, in other words, if you cannot fast and still fasting, you're considered achzor, you're considered cruel. That's how Rashi learns. But Tosfos learns that no, and Shlokish agrees with Rabbi Lazar HaKapor, that fasting is a terrible thing. And therefore it says that a goimel, and this is how Tosfos learns. Over Shlokish, no, I hold like Rabbi Lazar HaKapor and Shmuel that you shouldn't fast. And if you don't fast, you're actually called a chassid, which is exactly what chassidim don't fast, don't have to. And it says goimel nafshay ish chassid. Somebody who feeds himself is called a chassid. And look at Tosfos says, "Shegoimel chesed l'nafshe she'eino misam." Nikra chassid is called a chassid. Yeah, how appropriate. Okay, it says even further. Rav Sheshes says, "Hi Bar Beirav." Rav Sheshes says that this Yeshua the Yosef Betanitza was fasting leichel karbel l'sherusa. a dog should eat all of his food. That what do you mean? That the whole fast is not a good idea, and it's like a dog. A dog, we learned once before that a dog is very, very poor. Less anya mikalba. There's nothing poorer than a dog. And that's why a dog can eat once in a few days. And he's saying over here that if somebody fasts, then just like a dog has no food, what's the value of that? Nothing. When you're fasting, there's no value in your fasting. And therefore, what's the point? No, if Sheshes agrees with Shmuel, like Kapar, we discourage fasting. Even if you could fast, we discourage it. And ayah fasting, so like Rashi explains, will treat your fast like somebody who just can't afford to eat, not because there's anything holy about it. Rabbi Baba said, "Ain't tiny bubble. There's no public fast and bubble apart from Tisha B'av. And the Tisha B'av that only Tisha B'av itself. In other words, we're talking about if you want to fast, it doesn't. The Tisha B'av is the only time that you have a full fast, 24 hours, and you don't work, and all of these other inuyim that we have." Says Rabbi Yirmiyah that if they did fast the bubble, but they didn't have all the chumras like Tisha B'av, they didn't have all those chumras. Taisa learns they just had no reason to fast because he's trying to say that it has a lot of rain there. Plus, we learned before the ground was always fertile and soaked, and because of the rivers and everything else, and therefore, and also to collect the water because they were downstream, and therefore there's no need to fast. Rabbi Lakish, Ein Talmid Chacham Rashoi Leisha B'Tainis. A Talmid Chacham actually has no right to fast because it weakens you, and because Shemai Belecha Shemai, you can't learn properly. Your whole avoid is to learn, and you want me to learn if you're hungry. So therefore, it's not commendable at all. It's not commendable at all to fast. Letting about further, you can eat and drink at night. Yachid if a Yachid accepted upon himself kindness, if a Yachid took upon themselves a fast, some kind of a tzara, and they took upon themselves a fast. And the way the big machashim had a money like Rashi. So it means the day before you have to makabel by. We'll see later whether it's a time of mincha or during mincha itself. You accept upon yourself to fast. And then, but at night, as we just said, only Tisha B'av you fast 24 hours. So at night you can eat and drink whatever you want. I feel you ate and drank the entire night. The following day you daven, you say anenu. When do you actually say anenu? Is a big machlekes. When you say by all the tefillas, we today say it only by mincha. And why do we say by shachris? So there's some of the Rishonim say because we don't want you to be a liar, because you're going to say anenu, then you don't fast the part of the day for whatever reason. Taisa disagrees with that. Taisa says when you don't be, the Taisa says even if you eat later, you're not a liar because at the time you thought you were fast and something happened, you couldn't make it. But evidently the minig is that the chazan says anenu and not the people. So that might be because of the shas, nobody says anenu, even if you're fasting 24 hours, and we only say it by mincha. But the shliach tzibur could say it because he's representing the whole community. Definitely, some people in the community are going to be fasting the entire day. So therefore, the shliach tzibur can say anenu. So anyway, so the following day he could say anenu. What about lon bitanisei? The way Rashi learns, the big machlekes shom halam shat. Lon bitanisei. Rashi learns you took upon yourself a fast on Monday, and then come Monday night, for whatever reason, you didn't eat, and you fell asleep early. You slept through the night, and then the following day, but you did. It happened by itself. The following day, so the second day now, do you say anenu or not? And why not? The next day, since you're not going to fast the whole day, even by shachas, you won't say anenu. You know, you continued your fast, but initially you fasted only for one day, and you decide to continue it for part of the next day. We'll soon see what exactly the reason why. It's not, you don't say anenu. Now, why not? Rabbi Yosef said, how do we understand that Rabbi Huna? Mike, what does he hold? Does he hold ein misanin l'shos? Does he hold that the whole concept of fasting for a few hours? The reason why the following day you don't is because he wasn't really makabel tainus properly, and therefore if he wanted to in the middle of the night to wake up in the middle of the sleep and to eat something, he could, because you cannot accept a tainus for half a day. So therefore it's not really tainus at all. Nothing happened at all. because it says lon betani, so he just like sort of happened by itself. So what about this? The night started, this is what happened. The night started, you had no intention of fasting anything else. But then a couple of hours went by before you realized it. You said, you know what? I already fasted a few hours. I'll fast a little bit further. So therefore, you only took upon yourself to fast part. That's not called a Kabbalah at all. So in fact, you could change your mind. There's no fasting at all. Is that pshat? Maybe Taka holds that no, you could fast for a few hours. If you took upon yourself to fast, for 6 hours, it's considered a fast. But because it's not a full day, and then you don't say, but you cannot change your mind. You have to fast those 6 hours. Definitely you have to abide by your commitment. But But if you fast only a partial day, you don't say anenu. Like we have sometimes we fast half days. So you don't say anenu, but it's still a fast. Abaye said, Abaye said, sometimes you think that Rabbi Yosef didn't have any other students but Abaye. Because practically every time he says something, Abaye has a comment to make. Seldom you also have the Rabbi has comments to make, but so is Abaye. Really, I could tell you, that definitely you can accept upon yourself a fast. It's only a partial day. And I'll go further. And if you took upon yourself a partial day, mispaled Philistines, that you do, if you took upon yourself to fast till midday, whatever it is, you have to say Philistines as well. So why over here don't you? Here's different. You weren't makabel at all. Here's a different story altogether. Here, what happened was you were fasting Monday, and then Monday night came. You could have broken your fast, but you were busy doing something, and 2 hours later, suddenly you say, "You know what? I'll continue fasting." So you never had a proper Kabbalah, and that's why it's not a fast day. But if you would have had a proper Kabbalah and say, "I'll fast only the night," or fast until 12 o'clock, it's a proper time, and you can also say Anem. Marukve Ikla Ginzik, what came to the town of Ginzik. Rashi says, make sure it's Marukve, not Rabbi Akiva, because if you ever have a story about Rabbi Akiva, you would always start with Tanya, not in just the Gemara. And Rabbi Akiva, Rashi says, never had such kind of questions. So what happened was, Marukve came to the town of Ginzik. Boy, they asked him 3 questions. First of all, Miss Anin Lishas, ain't Miss Anin Lishas, can you fast part of the time or not? Lahaviyah did not answer. Is it a valid time, this or not? Next one is Kankin Shal Nachrim. Let's say you have these jugs from Goyim, these barrels from Goyim that had yain nesach in it, but it was cold. Is a sunna mutana? Are you allowed to use them? You're not allowed to use them for kosher wine later. Wash them out, rinse them out. Can you use them? The other didn't know. Third question was Adam during the shoes. Maybe it was a kohen. They all dressed like a kohen. What did Moshe wear during the 7-day Milui? The Gemara is asking about the 7-day Miluyim, doesn't ask about the 8th day in the Chnukas of Mishkan. So it sounds like the 8th day, when everything was active, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't wear big day kuna. The question is, during Shuvas Miluyim, all the preparatory stages, what was Moshe Rabbeinu wearing? He wasn't a kohen. What was he wearing? Again, he didn't know. And so then Gemara says, also he went to show them, and he went to Beis Medrash to ask them what they think. They said as follows: if you take upon yourself before that you're going to fast for a few hours, it's a valid fast. And you daven tefillas times. Number 1. Number 2, these barrels from Goyim after 12 months. This is in the Yain Nesach taste goes away. Mutarim, it is permitted. It is permitted. And this is the famous thing, the Chamsi, we talk about using the heter for China of treif after 12 months, even though you cannot kasha. But after 12 months, maybe you can kasha, especially if you have some meruba, is relying on this over here, that after 12 months, the taste is so vague and so off and effective that it doesn't contribute to anything, and you're allowed to. And so after 12 months, you're allowed to. Within the 12 months, you have to do either, you have to let it, you have to kasher it. But and the way you do either is either 3 days, you put it you put it in the bathtub 24 hours, 3 days in a row. That's within the 12 months. Post 12 months, nothing. What did Moshe do all 7 Elohim? The chaluk lavan. He didn't wear kohen's clothes, but nor did he wear the ordinary weekday clothes. He wore a white outfit that had no pockets, it had no linings, that things can be hidden. They didn't trust Moshe Rabbeinu that he might not walk away with some of the Mishka's treasures. Amar Rav Chizda, and that's what we learn from Amar, because it says Hayisim Nekim Hashem Yisrael. You have to behave in a way that no above suspicion. Even Moshe Rabbeinu had to be careful. Amar Rav Kana, Amar Rav Chizda, Chizda said that he sort of qualifies. He argues with Rabbi. He says Hod Amrit. This that we say. Mis anin l'shoyim. You know when we say that you can fast for hours, that's a valid fast day. That the fast had to go until the evening. In other words, you might have started from 12 o'clock, but it had to go until that night. So what happened like this? Let's say if he would have taken upon himself to fast only in the morning, and then he ate in the afternoon, there's no ina here. What's the ina? A lot of people eat breakfast. The Talmidei Chacham usually eat breakfast practically right before noon. So where's the ina here? I can say anenu. And if you eat in the morning and then you fast afternoon, what's the anenu again? Where's the fast day? So he says, when can you say anenu? You have to feel some pain, but you're only fasting rishos. He said only the following way: that you took upon yourself to fast till 12 o'clock, but then the poil you didn't eat from 12 until nighttime. So definitely it was anenu. You didn't take upon yourself to fast in the afternoon. You only took upon yourself to fast in the morning. But because you fasted until the evening, therefore you're entitled to say anenu, because you felt pain. Says the Gemara, he said this is a full day fast. Even though you took upon yourself to fast only in the morning, but you fasted the rest of the day, that's a full day fast. So surely it's a regular fast. And you say anenu, and everything else. So what are you telling us? What he's talking about here was this. So we're talking about the Chiddush of Chizah, talking about you had no intention of fasting at all, but for whatever reason you didn't fast in the morning. So now it's lunchtime, you're about to eat, and then you say, you know what? Since I already fasted till the morning, the whole morning, I won't eat the rest of the day. I'll makabel tainus for the rest of the day. That's the Chiddush of Chizah. So even though you sort of fell into it and you were fasting anyway for no apparent reason, that's considered a fast, and you could say anenu. It's exactly the opposite of what we said before. In the beginning, we thought the case was you took upon yourself a fast a half a day, and then you continue to fast the rest of the day. So Abai said that's a regular fast day, even though you took upon yourself only half a day, but you're continuing to fast, fine. It's extension of a fast day. The Chiddush of Chizah is that even though the morning fast was not intended, but now that you fast in the morning, you say, no, I'll continue fasting, you can say anenu. Chizah says, Kol tainis, shleshokol of chama, lav shmei tainis. Consistent with what you just said a minute ago, that a tainis, in order to be a tainis, it has to go till nighttime in order to be considered a fast day. Because if you fast only in the morning, it's not really a fast. Major asked a question we learned later. Anshe Mishmer, we're talking about the different fast days. So we talk about the Kohanim and Beis Hamikdash and the Anshe Mishmer. These are in the Kohanim itself. You have two groups. You have the Beis Av and the Mishmer. The Mishmer are those people who, for the entire week, they have to be there available. And the Beis Av is every day another Beis Av did the work. So the Anshe Mishmer, when it came to fasting, Miss Ali, they would fast, but we don't want to fast the whole day. You have to be always ready, and they need their strength. The Lay Mashlim, they didn't fast the full day. So we see clearly from here that a partial fast is considered a fast. So Gemara says, no, that's not a fast at all. That's not a fast at all. But we tell them we want you to fast with your brethren to shoulder some of the pain and show that you empathize with all of them. So it's not really a proper fast. So therefore, they don't say anenu and so on. And if they have to eat, if they're really hungry and thirsty, they can. Tosh probably another item of Blaza ben Sadil ani. I am, we had this narrative. I am from the grandchildren of Sanav, from Benjamin, and they were, the few families that came back with Ezra to Israel, and therefore they had a chag. They used to bring the wood. They had their own days. Once their festive day was the 10th day of Av, and one day it happened that the Tisha B'av was on a Shabbos, so it gets pushed off till Sunday. But the Chinur Lachar Shabbos pushed off till Sunday. Bisaninu boy, and we fast this Sunday to Nidche. We didn't fast the entire Sunday, we only fasted part of the Sunday, because on the other hand, it's our Yom Tov. Nation Yom Tov, Shalom, it's our Yom Tov. No, so we see that you could have a partial Yom Tov. Says the Gemara. So what they did was they used to bring wood to the Mizbeach. Generally speaking, if there was plenty of wood in the Mizbeach, nobody else brought any wood. And we stopped bringing new wood after Chamisha in middle of Av. And then we had different families, and one of them was Ben Binyamin, so that they had their festive day, which is the 10th day of Av, and they used to bring dafka their wood, even though there's already wood on the mizbeach. And they would celebrate on a city Bav. How can they fast Tisha B'av only part of the day? So we answer again. He was just sharing in the tsar of everybody else, but it wasn't really a proper fast day. Because in order to be a proper fast day, to say our name and all that, it has to go till nighttime. Toshma, coming here. I always stay in a fast until I come home safely, and then I will eat. So we see you can have a partial fast. Also, we answer the he only did it because he was constantly invited by the family of the Nasi, but didn't want them to be matriach about him. So he always told them, look, I'm fasting. I'm going to travel home safely. So they should leave him alone. He never really meant to fast. And that's why you can fast. But otherwise, we don't want a partial fasting. Okay. Everyone have a good day.